Welcome to our second Saturday session about the Bible. Last time we thought about has science disproved the Bible. This time I'd like to think just generally more about can I actually trust the Bible? So before we start this time I want to think about what is the Bible. So you might say, well, it's a holy book or whatever. Well, actually it's not really just one book. It's more like a mini library. There are 66 different books that comprise the Bible, and they were written over approximately 1500 years by about 40 different authors. Within the Bible, there are different books with all sorts of genres. There's history, there's poetry, there's sort of textbook stuff, love songs, science fiction. There's all sorts of stuff in the Bible. Primarily, the Bible is in the Christian Bible, I should say, is in two parts. That's the Old Testament, which consists of 39 books written from 1400 BC to 300 BC or thereabouts. And I've said in the slide in Hebrew, there's one or two bits that are in Aramaic. And then there's the New Testament, which consists of 27 books, mostly written in a very short period of time, actually, probably from around about 50 AD to 65 AD, though that's fairly contested as to exact dates. And it's written in Greek. Not actually the classical Greek of the scholars, but the Greek of the marketplace, Koine Greek as they call it. There is, of course, I'm neglecting to mention in the slides that there is also the disputed books of the Bible, the Apocrypha, and different churches, the Coptic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and I think the Somalian Church, a few other churches have different versions of the Apocrypha. The Bible is a bestseller. It has sold more copies than any other book. That's slightly difficult to actually give facts and figures on for a number of reasons, not least the fact that you have the question of how do you measure it, because all sorts of different people have produced copies of the Bible. It's not just books that are sold in the shop, but let's put it this way: if you want to be a successful publisher, you probably need to have the Bible as one of the books that you sell. So let's ask the question then. So that's what the Bible is like, but can I trust the Bible? So I want to ask a question: is it like King Arthur or King Alfred? As a child growing up, I think I got a little bit confused about these two, not least because their names are pretty similar. But in the one case we're talking primarily legend, and in the other case we're talking quite definitely history. So let's compare the two, King Arthur and King Alfred. So King Arthur is, if we look it up here, I think this might come from Wikipedia or something like that. King Arthur is a legendary British leader who, according to medieval histories and romances, led the defence of Britain against Saxon invaders in the late 5th and early 6th centuries AD. That's King Arthur. Now compare that with King Alfred. Alfred the Great was King of Wessex from 871 to 890, I think that is. Alfred successfully defended his kingdom against the Viking attempts at conquest, and by the time of his death he had become the dominant ruler in England. That sounds much more like history to me. So, legend or history? Well, first of all, we can note that the Bible reads like an eyewitness account. I've got down here, have a look at Peter, to the second letter of Peter, chapter 1 and verse 16. He's basically talking about being a disciple who was with Jesus, and a number of the disciples who were with Jesus wrote down their experiences of being with him. And if you read folk like C.S. Lewis, he will say about how you can tell when you read something whether it's a faithful eyewitness account or made up stuff. It just rings true. But you can read it for yourself and see what you think. Also, there's a lot of detail in the Bible, and it is all correct. In particular, the person who was a companion of the Apostle Paul as he travelled around during the period of the early church. So Luke was a doctor, and he was university trained, and he had the university training. He brought that to what he wrote when he wrote the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, and the book of Acts is also written by Luke. And he was very, very careful about making sure that all the detail that he quoted was accurate and verifiable. And he gives a lot of specific detail that can be checked. So we've thought about King Arthur or King Alfred. We can think about Robin Hood or Horatio Nelson. So with Robin Hood, that's a retold story. Again, is it lost in the mists of time, and how much of it is real and how much of it is completely made up and romanticised? Who knows? Whereas Horatio Nelson, of course, we have a lot of things written down that we can verify, and whilst there might be bias in historical records and so on, that does happen. We know that a lot of the facts of what went on, and we can probe quite deeply into it as a result. So when we look at the Bible, what do we find? Well, first of all, the Gospels were written down soon after the event. Again, you can have a look at Luke chapter 1 and verses 1 to 3, where Luke is talking about how, while he himself was not an eyewitness, he made sure he talked to the eyewitnesses and got a faithful recording of everything he discovered. And of course, others, as we've already thought, have given us eyewitness accounts of events. And then you can say, well, that was 2,000 years ago. A lot can happen to a book over 2,000 years as it gets translated and changed and so on. But actually we have fragments of text that go right back to really quite near to the time of writing. Probably, I think the earliest fragment we have is a fragment of the Gospel of John, and it's quite possibly, if it's not quite within the lifetime of the Apostle John himself, it's very close. So is the Bible more like a novel, or is it a life changer? Is it a fun story, or is it essential reading? Well, the first thing is it's still relevant today. The bit there about 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16 is about all scripture is given by God's inspiration, and it's suitable for teaching, instruction and living a good life and so on. It also shows me what God is like. The bit about John chapter 3 verse 39 is it's talking about how when I read the Bible I read about Jesus, and Jesus shows me what God is like. So what? So what have we discovered through this? Well, first of all, is the Bible is not one author but about 40 authors, very different people reflecting different views and different thoughts, and yet there is a common theme. I want to have a look again at that. I think it'll have to be after Christmas now, but I do want to return to that idea about the common theme that runs through the Bible. It also reads like an eyewitness account. It rings true. It is historically accurate, where we can test it and check it. It is relevant today. It talks about things that impact on our daily living. So I can trust the Bible, and because I always like to finish with a verse, let's have this one. Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. That's another verse from the longest psalm in the Bible, Psalm 119. This one is verse 105. Thank you for watching, and we'll have to start thinking a little bit about Christmas, I think, from here on.